Follow along, Catholic pilgrims, as we follow French doctor of the Church, St. Francis de Sales, through his book, Introduction to the Devout Life. Tune in as we read through this practical guide for living out the Catholic faith well. Fellow pilgrims, welcome to the first chapter of the first part of the Introduction to the Devout Life. Our topic today is true devotion, and let's go ahead and begin. Chapter 1, True Devotion Described. You aim at true devotion, my dear Philothea, because as a Christian, you know how acceptable it is to the Divine Majesty. But inasmuch as trifling errors at the outset of any undertaking are wont to increase rapidly as we advance, frequently becoming almost irreparable, it is needful that, first of all, you should ascertain wherein lies the virtue of devotion. For there are many counterfeits, but only one true devotion. And therefore, if you do not find that which is real, you will but deceive yourself, and vainly pursue an idle, superstitious form. Aurelius gave to all his works of art the countenance of the women he loved, and so every one colors his devotion according to his tastes and inclinations. One is given to fasting, and whilst he fasts, he holds himself to be devout, although his heart is full of bitterness. And whilst he will not touch his lips with wine, nor even with water for abstinence sake, he scruples not to sully them with his neighbor's blood in slander and calumny. Another would fain be devout because he daily repeats many prayers, although at the same time he gives way to angry, proud, and injurious language amongst his servants or associates. Another willingly opens his purse to give alms to the poor, but he cannot open his heart to forgive his enemies. Another forgives his enemies, but only force obliges him to do justice to his creditors. Such men may pass for devout, but they are not really so. When the messengers of Saul sought David, they found only an image in his bed, which, being dressed by Michael in David's garments, deceived them so that they imagined it to be David himself. Thus many persons clothe themselves with a garb of external devotion, and the world believes them to be really devout and spiritual, whilst in truth they are mere statues or phantasms of devotion. True living devotion, my Philothea, implies the love of God. Indeed, it is itself a true love of Him in the highest form, for whereas divine love enlightening our soul is called grace and makes us pleasing in His sight, so giving us power to do good, it is called charity. And when it reaches that point of perfection wherein it not only causes us to do good, but to do it earnestly, frequently, and readily, then it is called devotion. The ostrich never flies. The common fowl flies but seldom, and then heavily and near the ground. But the swallow, the dove, and the eagle are ever on the wing. They fly far and easily. Even so, sinners rise not to God, but always grovel on the earth in pursuing earthly things. Well-meaning people who are as yet not truly devout mount up to God in good works, but rarely, slowly, and heavily, whilst the devout fly to Him perpetually soaring lightly. In short, devotion is spiritual agility and vivacity, by means of which charity works in us, or we in her, with love and readiness. And as charity leads us to obey and fulfill all God's commandments, so devotion leads us to obey them with promptitude and diligence. Therefore, no one who fails to observe all these commandments can be truly virtuous or devout, since to that end he must have charity, and further, thorough readiness and eagerness to fulfill the laws of charity. And as devotion consists in perfect charity, so it not only makes us active, ready, and diligent in keeping God's commandments, but furthermore, it stimulates us to the eager and loving performance of all the good works we can attain to, even such as are not enjoined us, but only suggested or counseled. even as a man just recovered from an illness walks on his journey only as far as is absolutely necessary with pain and difficulty, so the repentant sinner treads in God's ways heavily and slowly until, having attained the grace of devotion, he resembles the healthy and light-hearted traveler who not only proceeds on his way but runs and leaps with joy in the way of God's commandments, hastening into the paths of his heavenly counsels and inspirations. In truth, charity and devotion differ no further than flame and fire. For charity is a spiritual fire, which when it flames brightly becomes devotion. And devotion adds to the fire of charity a flame which renders it ready, active, and diligent, not only in keeping his commandments, but in carrying out his heavenly inspirations and counsels of perfection. I was sitting in daily Mass not long ago, and the priest was talking about wearing masks. To be even more specific, he said that we wear masks to make people believe that we have true devotion. And we wear masks to make ourselves believe we have true devotion. St. Francis refers to this as, quote, the garb of external devotion, unquote. Now, the question is, why do we do this? Well, it always boils down to how we want to think about ourselves and how we want others to perceive us. We want to believe that we are pious, devoted, virtuous people, and in order to make ourselves feel good, we like to measure ourselves up against other people. Well, I'm more devoted than that person. We've all said that at some time or another, or at least thought it. Here's the test. Are you doing the things you are doing, praying the rosary, signing yourself, blessing your food in public, taking the Eucharist on the tongue, etc.? Are you doing those things because you want people to believe that you have true devotion? Or do you do them out of true love of God? Now, I'm pretty sure everyone listening, myself included, will say, of course I do all those things for love of God. I don't care what people think. So when reading through this, we have to be darn honest. St. Francis gives us some examples of those who believe they have true devotion but are wearing the garb of external devotion. Quote, one is given to fasting, and whilst he fasts, he holds himself to be devout, although his heart is full of bitterness. Another would fain be devout because he daily repeats many prayers, although at the same time he gives way to angry, proud, and injurious language. Another willingly opens his purse to give alms to the poor, but he cannot open his heart to forgive. Another forgives his enemies, but only force obliges him to do justice to his creditors. Unquote. Oh yeah, I'm guilty of all of these things. I like to think about the first part that he talks about, the good stuff. That's what I like to think about. And more often than not, I would like to ignore the second half of what he talks about, the bad stuff. And so, how can we attain true devotion? St. Francis says, quote, as devotion consists in perfect charity, so it not only makes us active, ready, and diligent in keeping God's commandments, but furthermore, it stimulates us to the eager and loving performance of all the good works we can attain to, even such as are not enjoined us, but only suggested or counseled. Unquote. And when no one is looking, do we do all these pious things? A wonderful thing to strive for, Catholic pilgrims, in our first reading. I pray you have a beautiful day. And until next time, live the faith boldly and travel well.